almost a month.
All right.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering Indiana women's basketball. I'm your host tonight, Kathy Amos, and joined by my co-host, Jeff Marlow. Also, we are joined by a very special guest, Lenny Holmes, who is the dad to Mackenzie Holmes on the women's basketball team. But before we jump into our conversation with Lenny, I do want to give our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Jeff and Lenny, for me, I'm going to go back to just a couple of days ago when the team returned from their trip to Greece. We talked about this trip to Greece that was coming up before they went, and about how important it was for the team and for the program. It's been about 6 years since the program has done an international trip with Coach Morin, and so this was very important for them to do. There's almost no downsides to it as long as we avoid injuries. Shout out to Sarah. Hopefully she's doing all right with her knee. But it gave us a chance to see a little bit of the team. The games were broadcast live. We actually got to see a lot of team camaraderie, and a lot of the parents got to go along and visit with them as well and see them play. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that trip here tonight. So with that is our Hoosier Proud banner moment for tonight. And as always, our Hoosier Proud banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their product lines of existing schools in their lines. So you're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that loves great collegiate gear. In fact, they are starting to release bomber jackets. The Indiana bomber jacket was a huge hit earlier this year, and they're now doing that for several other schools. They just released Iowa State here not too long ago, and more schools will be released over the over the upcoming year. So not only do you get great quality apparel, but you're also supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelley School of Business. So go to homefieldapparel.com and use your promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire first order. Again, that promo code is HOME for 15% off, and the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay, so just some quick other headlines since our last show. It's been a while. Paige Beckers, for those of you who have heard of Paige, is going to be playing for UConn this upcoming season. She has battled some injuries, but it seems that she's back on the mend and is expected to play. Iowa, from down in my neck of the woods, has announced they have sold out every home game with season tickets. That means they've sold 15,000 season ticket holders to every game, and they will not be selling season tickets. The other thing that Iowa women
they won't be selling single game.
Yes, or any more season tickets for that matter. But yes, they are selling no more tickets. All the season tickets have taken their seats. The other cool thing that the Iowa women are doing is a crossover event where they're actually going to play a basketball game in Kinnick Stadium in the football arena, and they're expecting to sell around 70,000 tickets for that game. For us back here at the Hoosier Ticket Project, if you haven't, today are in the midst of their second annual Giving Blitz. So if you haven't given, I would highly encourage you to go out and go to the Hoosier Ticket Project's website and just hit that donate button. They make the process very easy, and really encourage everyone. And then last on the Indiana front, Avery Howell, who is a 5'11" wing out of Boise, Idaho, and a 4-star recruit. She's ranked number 45 overall in the class of 2024, has announced that IU is in her final 5 schools. So depending on who decides to come back for that 24-25 season, this 24 class could look fairly large compared to the last few years. Jeff, anything you want to add to those Hoosier headlines?
Well, I just want to add in here, Kathy. I'm sure people are like, why are we talking about UConn and Iowa on doing the work? I'm just the opinion that those are things that are good for women's basketball in general. And I think we ought to celebrate that. Just like this show, as we were kind of talking off air, we started this show to celebrate IU women's basketball. And they're a big part of that discussion now. But I think those are things that if you're really a women's basketball fan, you're really excited about, because that grows the game. And anytime you can get somebody back like that, like Paige Beckers, or you see what Iowa's doing in terms of their season ticket sales. But also, again, we want to mention Hoosier Ticket Project. We just had them on the last time we were, with our last show. Such great people. I want to make sure that if you can, don't forget you can either donate to them, or if you have an unused ticket, you're not going to use tickets, you can donate the actual ticket to them as well.
Yeah. How about you, Lenny, before we jump into some of your background and questions? Any of those headlines stick out that you want to touch on?
I just hope Iowa saves some seats for us parents this year. Last year they had us in the farthest you could get away from the court. So I'm hoping this year they might get us a little bit closer to the court where we make that trip, because it is an electric atmosphere out there, though. Just like, no question, just like Assembly Hall and what happens there with our women. When you're out there, it's kind of neat. As you say, grow the game and talk about women's sports. You're going into the den when you go over there to play. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I was at that game too last year, Lenny. So I was right there up in the corner, nosebleeds, cheering alongside you guys. So. Well, good. Good. So I was just going to give a quick overview, Lenny, of what you've already shared with Jeff and I for our audience, but feel free to add on to any of this too. So for those of you who might know, Lenny is, again, the father of Mackenzie Holmes. He is out in Maine, and he's been involved in Maine basketball in some sort of capacity since the early 80s. He was a player in high school and in college. He coached varsity basketball for the boys for 7 years. He took one of his two teams, which I'd like to hear more about this later, in two vans out to Indiana in the summer of 1992 to one of Bob Knight's team camps. And he got his first glimpse then of the passion, that maybe a little bit of passion that Indiana basketball fans exhibit. So yeah, hopefully we'll touch more on that later. He then moved on to an assistant college coaching in the late 90s. He got involved with AAU basketball also around that time, and has been running all the AAU and club events in Maine since 1998. So very impressive. And lastly, on the list that you gave us, you coached Maine Elite Boys junior teams. And while doing that, the kids got old enough to start playing. You stopped coaching others so that you could be around for all of your kids' journeys. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Good wrap.
So,
Thanks.
Lenny, I'll ask you kind of a question we didn't have on our list, but being the former coach, do you miss it? Are there times when you miss the actual coaching? I know you're watching Mackenzie and stuff, but are there times when you miss it?
Oh, yeah. I've said to people many times it was the greatest job I ever had. I'm still in touch with those kids. They still call it. It's funny. One sent me an email the other day, and it starts with, "Hey, coach," and I think that's anybody who's done coaching and really passionate about it and loved it. That still being called coach 30 years later is just a good feeling. And so, yeah, I do miss it. I've even joked that once this journey's done here, whenever it might end, that I might just kind of dip my toes back into the water and do it again for a few more years, because it was passion. It was actually it's what I thought I was going to do for my, that's what, when I got out of college, and I went into education so I could coach. That's what I wanted to do. So like a lot of guys, but past took me different ways. But yeah, without question, miss it, loved it, and honored to have it when my players still refer to me as coach. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, that's great. So maybe right off of that, might as well start off. Why don't you share your story with us about Bob Knight?
Okay. So we decided in the early 90s, I was in a program rebuilding. I jest that my first year coaching there, I won as many games as they did the previous 3 years combined, but that was only 3 wins. So,
you still accomplish some.
That is cool. You got to move
that part out if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So we got in vans and we drove out to Indiana. I just thought, what a great experience. Let's do this. So made the trek, and there's 2 stories that kind of stood out to me from with Coach Knight. I don't know if you remember the movie Blue Chip. with Shaquille O'Neal, and that was being filmed at the time. So he was coming back and forth, and he would have each night after the sessions were done, he would have like a coaching of all the coaches into the cafeteria. He'd bring in food and he'd go over stuff. Well, he was running late one day, so we were in there, and there was a bunch. They brought in some pizza for everybody, but it was all just cheese pizza. So, and I'll give you the G-rated version. So,
you have to on this show.
So Coach Knight walks in, probably about half hour late from traveling for the movie and stuff. He looks around at the cheese pizzas, and he's like, "Are you effing kidding me? I've got all these coaches all across America coming to me, and we can't have one pepperoni pizza. All we can have is cheese pizza. Are you?" And going on. And literally, this is what was the part that kind of made me chuckle. You saw 5 guys gone. Like, he was in 30 seconds into that rant. He had 5 guys. They were gone. And a half hour later, there was a bunch of pepperoni pizzas for everybody. So it kind of gave me a little glimpse of, like, when he spoke, people moved. And in there was, he was a wonderful mind for basketball. There were so many little things he talked about. But then he told another story that I find really funny, and I'll share it. And you may have heard this at some point. He was the only Big Ten coach that actually taught a class.
Mm-hmm.
So he taught a coaching class, and he was very proud of the fact that he was the only Big Ten coach that did that. And he said, "So listen, I start every one of my classes, first day there, they're all athletes in this big auditorium, and I say to them, how many of you have a coach that you didn't like? Sometime in your life, how many of you had a coach you didn't like?" And he'd said, a few would go hands up, and then a couple more. Then he said, pretty much, he goes, before it was all done, every kid had their hand up that they had a coach at some point in their life they didn't like. And he said, and I look at him and I said, guess what? We don't like all you little bastards either.
I've heard a version of that one. He's also got a version of that kind of where, if you thought you had something, then like if you had somebody hard, if a coach you didn't like, then write down like who you thought really was, pushed you the most and got the most out of it. And 9 times out of 10, it would be the same person.
Yeah. So that was wonderful. It was a good time. And again, as you mentioned, it kind of, and I know you've heard maybe Kenzie talk about this before, but Maine has a real passion for basketball too. It really, it's like obviously not the size of Indiana and the athletic ability of the players and all those things, but it's got a really deep tradition. And so when we get out there to see that passion, and it really kind of, when this whole recruiting process started later on, and Indiana came calling, I shared those stories where they're like, you love the passion in Maine. You're talking about a place that is very similar into how they feel about basketball, and probably at another level. So that kind of was what happened. It started during that recruiting process, which is so long ago now. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeff, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up because that was one of our questions we had. How did you and your wife? How did you handle the recruiting process? Were you actively involved, or did you kind of let Mackenzie take the lead and then she came to you and you're like, I've got it down to 2 or 3? Talk to us a little bit about the recruiting process for you guys.
Yeah. So with Mackenzie started the recruiting, the hardest part if you're from Maine is obviously being seen by somebody, right? Because it's just, you've got to get on those. Yeah. You got to get on those courts. You got to be where those coaches are. And so locally, she had some, her freshman year, she had some offers, some D1 offers, and we sat and talked. And her club coach was very in tune to this. He had their program, the Firecrackers program at that time, had several Division I players come through, so he had those connections with the coaches. But for Mackenzie, it really took off. The beginning of that junior year, when the coaches can make official contact. She quickly, it went, from here to here, with different coaches calling and her really trying to figure out, I'm one of these people who want to like mathematically figure. So I'm like, okay, we have a rating system. How important to you is a campus? How important to you is a club day? And we're going to rate each school. But she's like, Dad, please. And so I might sell that. I keep thinking I should sell that someday because it was a pretty good system.
Sure. I did something similar when my son was going through his process to pick a school. So I made him fill out a grid. Same thing. Yep.
So the big things for her was she wanted to be on a campus. So she didn't want to be in the city, that she wanted a real campus atmosphere. She wanted to be at a school that had a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. And then she wanted a school where she thought, she was going to be able to contribute right away. She wanted to play. She wasn't terribly, interested in, like a stretch school where maybe you're on the bench, maybe you're not. She wanted some type of feeling that, this program wants me, I'm going to play. They got a chance to get to the NCAAs. So she came up with a list of 5 schools. And I told her, these were before she could do official visits. And she really, really wanted to make her decision before that club season between her junior and senior year. She wanted to relax and just enjoy that last stretch with her friends who she had played with for all those years. So I said, give me the 5 schools, 5 or 6 schools, and we'll go visit. We'll arrange for unofficial visits. We'll come see those schools. And so Indiana was one, Iowa State was one, Dayton at the time was one, a couple others. And we went on the visits. And Indiana was the first visit. And I felt like afterwards, why am I spending money on all these other visits? Because you could just tell,
It's a good visit.
that it went well and the connection was there. But and I understood she hadn't seen a lot of anything else that had to go through that process. It was a funny story on our first trip here. And you're kind of naive, you know what I mean? You're going through this process for the first time, and we fly into Indianapolis, and we're traveling, and the traffic between Indianapolis before all that construction was. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, 37.
And it was like wall to wall traffic, and we're supposed to be there at a certain time. She's like panicking, because she's a kid who's she's a coach's kid, right? If I'm supposed to be somewhere, I'm there a half hour early, being on time, and she's panicking, and we're calling Coach Weir's, but we're sorry, we're late, we're sorry. And he's like, relax. We're actually recruiting you, And so learning through that process, we showed up probably 2 hours before we could get, the traffic was just unbelievable. And it was like a Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. It was just brutal. So that's what happened. We went through that process. And then we did our last visit, and Mackenzie, we were in a mall parking lot, and Mackenzie said, I made up my mind. And I said, okay, well, give Coach Moore a call. And gave Coach Moore a call and we have it actually on recording when she's talking to her saying, I want to come to Indiana. And
that's awesome.
That was that.
I want to kind of stay with this real quick. So I'm going to butt in here real quick. Just, was there something that happened? Was there anything was there a growth spurt, or was there something in Mackenzie's game that all of a sudden kind of came together that got her some more attention besides playing the club ball? And then also with that, what were your impressions of, was it one of those you talk about the process? You took the IU visit at first. I always feel like sometimes, I've got 2 daughters who have gone off to school. My son's a senior in high school now. I always felt like with them, they always, the first campus they saw was everything compared to them. Did you get a little of that with Mackenzie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Your first question there, it was, she just made a commitment. She was always good and very talented and just did things different. You could just tell as a guy who's with, around the sport, it was like, okay, that's different. The ability to take contact, finish, all these other things and her hands. I mean, as big girls in particular, and not trying to discredit, hands a lot of them just don't have great hands. And she just could catch everything all the time. But her, I credit her coach in her AAU program. Again, Mackenzie's a pleaser. And I know Coach Moore has mentioned this a lot. She just committed to getting in shape, and she committed to running hard all the time. And I think that's what caught so many coaches' eyes was the number of times she was beating people up the floor. It's not because she's faster. It's just because she's running hard every single time. And there's, you don't have to be the fastest if you decide that every time you're going to run the hardest. Because other players, eventually you wear them down, and their mentality isn't that mentality. So I think that was really what started drawing the eyes. And the other thing is, you know, we would play top competition and she would really shine. And I, you know, her first big offer was from Coach Fenley out to Iowa State, where he saw her once in a game in her near the end of her sophomore year. And we were playing one of those teams on a Maine court, and they weren't there to see us. But Mackenzie was fantastic. And he called right away. Like we got done on Sunday, he called Monday and said, well, I know I'm offering you a scholarship. You're going to be offered a scholarship to play here at Iowa State.
That's great.
So that happened. And so that was that part of the process was really her dedicating herself. And I think you guys have seen that over the years at IU. Yep. It's that same mentality, that same mindset for her. If she had not like chosen Indiana, and obviously she has no regrets with that decision. She had a huge after her junior year into her senior year, she had a huge summer there. We played some big teams, players top 10 in the country, and she just, you know, dominated some of these players. And Sidney Parrish's dad, of course, he coaches those same top teams in Indiana. And so that he was at a tournament. We played a team called the Philly Bells, and they had a top 10 big girl on their team. And he told me the story after. It was really funny because now I got to meet him last year, great guy. And we talked, and he goes, I went up to Red afterwards. He goes, damn, you got a good one. He's like, you got a good one. You guys got one there. And so, yeah, that was kind of that part. I'm sorry, I don't recall the second part of your question.
But just about the comparison. But I think you kind of answered it while you were going through there about, you went to IU first, then everything after that kind of got compared to IU, it sounds like.
100%. Yeah, no question about it. I mean, just the only thing about IU that I wanted to make sure they really had at that time, you could see the trek. You know what I mean? You could see where they had been building, going from here to here to here. And I said, I think you've got what you want there in that NCAA and that thing and a fan base, to me, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I thought the fan base was a little slow coming on board to Indiana women's basketball, to be quite honest with you.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I think it was waiting for success.
Yes, it was.
Not that it should have, but it was.
Good way to put it.
It wanted something to believe in. And that's what Coach Morin and the kids like Mackenzie have finally given the family. Yeah. And you see what's happened since you've given them something to believe in.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought after the Elite 8 year, we would have saw a bigger bump. I really did. I thought, and it wasn't bad. Don't get me wrong here. I was waiting for what we had. Like last year, I usually try to sit in the stands down by the floor. And there'd be times I turn around and look and I go, I can't believe this. I mean, right. This is unbelievable. To see the support was just so unbelievable. And I think it's there for a while now. I think it's over the hump now. It's gone. It's taken off. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen that. I know we're not to the Iowa level we talked at the beginning with season tickets, but they still have had record season ticket sales. They actually have assigned seating now, paying for parking. We're seeing a lot of those things that is showing that the growth we've seen in the fan base hopefully is now sustainable as well. So was there one thing though, Lenny, that the IU staff, maybe Coach Morin said on the visit or pitch that really sealed the deal? Or was there one deciding factor, or was it more of a whole package kind of thing that led Mackenzie to us?
It was a whole package, but I'll tell you one of the things I thought Indiana did better than anybody. And I give Coach Red he was very good about also recruiting the families. Like he made the whole family feel comfortable. He made my son Cameron, who went out the IU, graduated from there and was a practice player for 3 years and really helped the program out. But he made a point to reach out to all of us, me, Mackenzie's mom, everyone. He did a really good job of, and it was sincere. It wasn't like I'm staging this. It was like, hey, no, you guys are part of this whole process too. And, and how about those Patriots, and different things, making connections to our region and our area. He came up, saw her up in Mass. And then, and of course, Coach Morin, is kind of is the closer, so to speak. You set all those things up, and Coach Morin, came up and visited. I mean, she flew into Portland, Maine for a club practice, and it flew in, watched the practice I was running with the girls, and then flew back out and flew back down. So they made it clear that they were really serious. And you hear that from the recruits too. And it's the truth. It is that if you're looking for that kind of family, bringing you all in, it's legit. It really is legit. And it's how they've built it. That one stepping stone at a time, getting those players who commit, who want that type of atmosphere.
Yeah, we definitely have heard that in interviews that we've done, as well as interviews we've read or listened to with other players that have been in the program, or even the incoming freshmen this year, both said about the family atmosphere. So definitely a theme we hear reoccurring. Jeff, anything else on recruiting, or you want to?
No, I was going to let you take another question because I took kind of two in a row. So I was going
to. Yeah. One thing I was kind of curious, being out in Maine, it's not exactly a quick, 1-2 hour drive. How do you handle the distance now? Both you and your wife, and having your son Cameron had been there as well. Do you make it? How many games do you make it to? You mentioned you look around at the crowd, so clearly you come. So how do you handle that during the regular season?
Well, I'll just say I'm a platinum member to 2 airlines right now. I don't pay for baggage.
Yeah.
I got a lot of upgrades.
I love that answer.
I'll tell you a little interesting piece. Myself and my wife, Mackenzie's stepmom, we actually looked at, because of what you're talking about, we looked at moving to Indiana. After when she made that commitment. Matter of fact, my wife had a job offer. I was a finalist for a job as a assistant principal and somewhere up the road there. And then we took a visit, and we're like, are we being foolish right now? Or, because I have all this stuff here I do, right? And I'm like, okay, let's get our heads around how many of these games can we actually see? Because it was really, really important to me to be part of the process. To be there for her. And it's not the same when you watch it on TV. It's just not.
Nope.
And so just really made a commitment, which I'm just, many of the times, because of what I do for work outside of the thing is I'm a director of an alternative education school, and they're really good. If I need a Friday off. So this year, those Thursday night, Sunday games were awesome. Because I would fly out, I'd get out around 1 or 2 o'clock, fly right out, shoot over to the games, and then stay through till Sunday. I was at 22 games this year, I think.
Wow.
And that's been pretty much general, 19 to 20, 21 games a year. The only ones I really don't get to are the weekday games at Wisconsin. I'm not making that trip.
Especially in January.
Yeah, exactly. The Big Ten is pretty cool because it seems like they schedule the bigger games on the weekend for the most part. Mm-hmm. A lot of the, when they play the Iowas or they play the Michigans or Ohio State, they try to schedule it at a time where, it's doable for us. So it really just made that commitment to, I'm going to go. I'm going to be part of this process and see it through till the end, and as many as I can get to. We've already booked our tickets to Stanford, to San Francisco, so we're headed out there for that game.
Nice.
We'll take the red eye back and get up.
And you'll miss out the trips to LA and Eugene and
yeah.
Don't get me started. I think that's just
different conversation for
sure.
Hey, I'll follow up with that a little bit on Kathy's question about that. So you've obviously Assembly Hall is going to be at the top of the list. All right. You've been to a lot of games on the road. What's the best arena you've been to outside of Simon Scott Assembly Hall for atmosphere, the way the game went, just, win or lose, but what was probably your favorite or most enjoyable experience on the road?
Yeah. As I mentioned, it's hard to argue with Iowa, even though I don't like their little bowl stadium there. I think it's very blah.
But it's interesting, Lenny, that if I'm right, Kathy, isn't that one of those where you walk in at ground floor and everything goes down?
Yes.
There are several gyms like that in Indiana here. High school gyms.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a lot of uniqueness to that place. Although I did, the excitement level there is just crazy. every game is like, I mean, I remember her freshman year where we ended up losing in overtime out there. And it was just, it's just, the support's been there and is there. I liked Minnesota.
I've heard that.
I thought that place had a lot of character.
Kind of neat.
Yeah.
With the raised floor and the atmosphere and the history there. Yeah.
The history, all that stuff. So I like Minnesota's there. I like that old feel. I like that. That has a little, not looks like everybody else's gym type thing. So I would say, even though, and at the time when we played Minnesota that year, they were pretty decent too. They had a big girl. I can't remember her name, but anyways, I went out there her freshman year and saw that game. I've been to, the only ones I have not been to are Penn State and Wisconsin. Those are the only two gyms I haven't been into.
Yeah. Well, maybe Wisconsin will be on the weekend and you can get that checked off your list.
You still may not make that trip.
Maybe not. If it's, January 10th or something, whatever. Well, maybe it's, too bad.
The funny thing is my son's girlfriend, and she's from Wisconsin, and she went there. So she's egging for us to go to the games can be there. She wants us to go there to meet her family and see people. But I'm like, we'll see.
It's a good incentive. So maybe let's transition a little bit to now your time with Mackenzie. It's Indiana, but it wasn't just Mackenzie. You already mentioned your son Cameron was a practice player for the team. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that process, how that works, and kind of your thoughts. Now you have essentially almost two players or two children that are involved now with the basketball program. So I was hoping to hear more.
Cam graduated. So he's made it a little more difficult, but he's still in Bloomington. He's a grad assistant coach at Illinois State women's basketball program. So this is his second year there. So Bloomington Normal, Illinois, and is
different Bloomington.
Blono. So when it was going on, it was actually great, to be honest with you, when he was there, because it's two birds with one stone. We'd go there and be able to visit with him, and Mackenzie is like, I mean, she's a Dad, I got 10 minutes for you at this time. Then I'm going here. And I get it. I don't interrupt her. We don't interrupt her schedule at all. We understand that, it's really, she's just who she is. She's got a program she's on. She's going to eat at a certain time. She's going to bed at a certain time. And I think all, for the most part, great athletes or people who have success, probably a lot of them have that discipline in them. So I think the hardest part, like with Cam there, he could come home for the summer. Well, the hardest part I found is, we don't get to see her. Mm-hmm. He comes home May for a couple weeks, then she's back out there all summer, comes home in August for a week, and then, 3 days at Christmas. And, had it not been for COVID, one of the positives where she had to come home for a couple of months,
right?
Like, we really very, very rarely does she, and the thing about Mackenzie is she wants to be there, and I get it. I want her here. Dad, we love her and we want her around, but for her mind to be relaxed, she has to be in her routines and she has to be doing what she does. So in terms of now a little more difficult, we fly into Indy and, we spend a day or two one place and we drive up to Bloomington Normal and see my son, and then drive back down to Indy and fly out. So, but it's a short time. Yeah. That's what I tell everybody. This is the end of it this year. With all the craziness, he'll graduate and he'll be looking for a job somewhere in the profession, and
hopefully she'll be playing WNBA somewhere and you'll be traveling to those games. So,
and maybe also Europe. You never know how the professional women's game works, because you get some of them who play the WNBA season, then they go overseas for the winter. So, hey, I'm going to pick this up from one of our workaholics here, Lenny. Those are our people who watch the live YouTube feed here. And this comes from Sarcastic Mike. Is there an area of Mackenzie's game that's improved the most, or perhaps surprised you that she was able that she can do now that maybe you're like, wow, I didn't know she'd be able to do that?
I would say, for me, the jump she's made last year that really made a difference is she slowed herself down. I think people think of her like as a traditional post who catches and makes a post move. You would be shocked. I actually had my son, because he came with all those video things, tell me how many times she actually shot off the dribble. It was like 82, 83 of her field goals were off the dribble, because she got really good at just catching and waiting and reading what was coming at her, and then deciding where she'd oftentimes in the past be, she loves to go to her left hand, and she'd catch the ball and she's going to her left hand, read the defense a little bit, but start that move with her left hand. Now she's got that counter with her right hand, and it's odd being a right-handed person, but that was always her weakness, was coming back with that right hand. It just wasn't as comfortable. And I say that without question, her ability to slow the game down and now also finish right or left very comfortably either way. And I think that's what makes her so hard to be guarded is, she waits. And as soon as you show her what you're going to do defensively, she takes advantage of it.
Yeah. High basketball IQ for sure. So kind of along that same lines, this also came from one of our listeners. In fact, it's from our good friend, Ari. Ari is the person behind the scenes that helps us with our podcast. But first, he wanted us to start off with this fun fact in case you didn't know that. But since Mackenzie arrived, since before Mackenzie was arrived, IU was only in the top 25 for 4 weeks total. Since she's been at IU, they've been in the poll all 4 years, every week. So we weren't sure if you knew that, but he wanted to make sure we shared that with you, because it's obviously something to be very proud of. But from your perspective in those 4 years, how much influence do you feel that Mackenzie has had on that statistic for the program?
Well, I think I'd like to think she's had some influence on it. But I think there's a lot of great players in the program, though. And you can't be a top 25 team without multiple great players. You have to have, a minimum of 3 or 4 who are potential all-conference type players to keep yourself in that top 25. I will say I was more surprised at where they've gotten to in terms of not just top 25. Now we're talking top 10 on a regular basis. I think that was the dream when she went there, was like, could we get to that point where we could actually, seriously talk about, are we a national championship contender? Are we a Sweet 16 contender? And I think they're at that point now where on any given night, I firmly believe they could beat anybody in the country. Things got to come together. Things got to go right. Things can't go wrong like they did last year in the round of 32. But they have to go right. So she's had an influence, but you're talking multitudes of great players have come through the program in the last 4 or 5 years that all contributed to that statistic.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap this back around to being at games, and you as a former coach, I got a feeling this plays a big role in it. But our friends Richie and Joel tell us that you love the refs.
Absolutely.
And so we're supposed to ask you about that.
Yes.
So have you ever gotten a Big Ten ref to kind of look at you and be like, that's enough?
Yeah, maybe once or twice.
You're doing your job then. Nice job.
I'm always willing to give them help. That's what they don't understand.
Yeah, just help. That's great. That's a great way to put it. I'm just helping.
It never worked. It never worked when I said that as a coach, by the way. I'm just trying to help.
I do say this. I always try to make it not about them, but about the call. So so one of those coaching things I learned. I don't say you. I say that call, so that I'm trying to depersonalize that goes back to coaching when I coached. People will tell you I was always a very emotional, like competitive, maybe a little too emotional at times. But I didn't get one technical my last 5 years of coaching, and people go, no freaking way. And I go, well, the one thing I did know is when to shut up.
My favorite, Lenny, you ever do this one as a dad? You ever the one official, man, you're doing such a great job, but that guy over there is really killing you.
Yeah, I've used that a couple times. Right into the hall. Hey, can you help him out? Come on, you can help him out, would you?
I love it.
All right. Well, Moving to something a little more in the just near past. Tell us about the Greece trip. I think we'd be very remiss if we walked away from this conversation not hearing your insights as a parent, as a basketball observer. What takeaways did you have from that trip?
Well, it was. I mean, first of all, if any of you are thinking to go to Greece, I highly endorse it. It was fantastic. It's beautiful. The people are great. They're, I joke with everyone. Us, the ugly Americans who can only speak one language, they're very okay with that. They're willing to help you. They're speaking 8 languages and we're speaking English, and they're very happy to be nice to you about it. Beautiful area. But it was really, I think, the whole point of it was, a team that, even though you have a lot of returners already, you do have new bodies, you do have new people. And it's just it was a glorious way for them to get to know each other a little bit better, learn more about, as you all know, if you've ever gone on a long trip with somebody, 10 days, you learn a lot about people. Like you can fake it for a night, you can't fake it for 10 days. So I think they had that opportunity to build the basketball. Quite honest, the teams they played were, if you guys did you guys watch?
I watched some highlights. Yeah.
They were not good.
Yeah. And Mackenzie didn't play in either game, right?
No, Mackenzie, they made the decision, and it was funny. Coach Morin came up to us right before the first game and stood. She goes, "I'm not playing her, right?" I'm like, "Yes, Coach, we know."
Yeah.
and we were cool with it.
How did she feel about that?
Mackenzie's a competitor. Mackenzie loves to play. So
I saw the girls' camps where she was blocking all the little girls. So Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, she does that up here too when she runs her little camps up here. She gets a kick out of those kids and then whacking them. But no, I think going into it, she was really wanting to play. But when coach said no, I think one of the great things about Mackenzie is, she's not going behind her coach's back. She's not ever. Coach says that, and maybe it's because her mother was a coach. I'm a coach, and grew up in a coaching family, and talking about having those conversations. Coach says it. Okay, must be for the best. This is for the best of me. That's why we're not going to do it. So she accepted it, and knew. Even though she'd been playing, full court with the girls, and doing all those things. I think just the mere thought of what if something happened, how stupid would this look? That she was on the court over there against, competition that is. I'm sure there are high school girls teams in Indiana better than the teams they played. So.
And with that, Lenny, I'll build off of that. You're talking about the games. And again, not the competition they'll see here. And it was August on a trip in Greece. But I'm not asking you to give away any secrets that you would have saw, or maybe because you get information. But what did you think watching the two new freshmen and the transfer? How did you feel like they kind of meshed in with the group?
Yeah, I think they meshed well. I think, with freshmen, I think confidence is always a big thing. Like you now are into a new arena with new people. You're no longer the only big fish in the sea. You're now just you're one of the minions again. You're back there, the minnows swimming around. So I think for the two freshmen, and not going into details about who won, I think confidence wise, if they both stay very confident, they can contribute and help. There's no question in my mind. They both do really good things. They both have a good IQ for the sport. And that's what I'm watching. Like I'm not watching, that they score or not or whatever that. I'm watching, did they make the right pass? Did they see what was coming? Did they take the shot on correctly, or was there another pass could have been made? Those little things are parts that you kind of watch, and they both are really, really bright kids with talent. It'll just really come down to two things: the physicality of the sport at the Big Ten level. Once they start playing those games, getting their bodies ready for that, and then staying confident and understanding, you're not going to come in and play 30 minutes, right? There's too many people ahead of you. You've got to use the most of those, whatever minutes you get. You've got to be able to produce confidently, and that's what will help you grow. Shanice, I think will, again, she's very athletic. got up and down the court fast. I think, the hard part to tell is size wise, right? Because they weren't playing anyone with size.
Right.
She's not a 6'4" post player. So, she's again in this league that she's in, that'll be the question mark, how does she fit when she has to defend those bigger kids that are in the league? And so, but certainly works extremely hard, runs the floor hard, does those type of things as well.
Yeah. So again, if you don't want to answer this, fine, but just for our fan base, is there one player in particular you think that we should definitely pay attention to that might make a big leap from last year coming into this coming season?
It's really hard. I think, I'm a fan of Lexi. And I think she has some skills and some athleticism, understanding of the sport. So I think if you say a jump, I would say, considering where, she didn't get a ton of minutes last year, I would think that there's more minutes there for her this year.
Yeah.
I actually think Sarah's going to have a huge year. And that's the other person. I think her comfort, I don't think she ever got comfortable last year. And on this trip, the one thing I said to several people was she just looks so much more comfortable now, and so much more at ease. And shooters, you want your shooters, they got to be relaxed. They got to
be at ease. Yeah.
So I see her as another one who I would be would not be surprised at all to see her have numbers more like she had
at Minnesota.
Yeah.
I did you see the video of her? And I think it was Lennay on the jet.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was
to me, that kind of what you're saying, there was just kind of a relaxedness there. And again, I'm not around the program like you are, but it just seemed like last year, it was almost like she was at times she was trying too hard, that she felt like she had to prove she belonged on this team.
Right. Yeah. And it was hard, because, she went from being a volume shooter, right?
Right.
And now you're not getting that volume anymore. So you got to adjust your game. And then just never, she would have obviously great games, but just never looked like relaxed. Like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And I see that. I saw that on the trip in her. And I really think that I think the other girls are all going to do well and play well. But if you're asking for people, I think might take a step. She's the other one who I think might.
Yep.
I would be surprised if she didn't average double figures.
Good. Great to hear.
A couple of quick questions for you, Lenny. We'll try and get you out of here. And Kathy, I'll let you take one here.
Sure. So maybe we'll cover off the one that we got here from Jeff Grigsby in the chat. Yes.
He says he says this will bring a smile to your face.
Yes. He wants to know, who is your favorite former player, Pat Moody or Darren Elder? Or Tyler Graves is also an acceptable answer. So these must be former players of yours.
Yes, they all are.
Yeah.
I don't play favorites. Okay? I love them all. So there you go. There's your answer. They're all great kids. They all played a lot of years for me. So anyway, so every one of them I love.
And Lenny, I guess the last question I'll have for you, we may still end up with another follow-up or two, but you're in a unique perspective. And you're our first parent that we've had. We've interviewed a couple of players. I had a show with Grace Berger a couple of years ago where I interviewed Grace, got to know her a little bit and such. But you're the first parent we've really had a chance to talk to. Is there one thing or maybe something that you really want our listeners to understand about being the parent of a Division I athlete? And what would it be?
I'm not sure if it's limited to Division I athlete. Maybe, for me, it's that, sometimes we might be a little irrational, but because we see the work they do, you know what I mean? And it's, I have oftentimes will have somebody say, you must be so proud of Mackenzie's accomplishments and that, in essence, of course we are, right? Yes, but I'm more proud of, for me, what gets me happy is that everything she's put into it is now bearing fruition, right? So she has put in an incredible amount of work. This is a kid who just doesn't cheat it. And sometimes that, you're, as a parent, you're so vested in your child and what they do and wanting them to do well. There are times, sometimes you don't think rationally because you're just so darn invested in that kid and wanting things to be good for them. It's not so much you want to see the team win. But you want them to have success because you know what they've done, and you want them to be happy. And the only way they're going to be happy is if they do win. So, it's that kind of what comes first, right? In those instances, I think that's the one part people understand is that we see what they put into it. We see all the work and hard work. So sometimes when we're yelling or we're saying things that you may look at and go, "What the hell's wrong with you?" It's just an emotion for our kid because we want them to get that. I mean, I can't tell you if it's off top kind of. I can't tell you what it was like after that Miami game last year. I mean, it was. I literally felt like I was in. And you may say, "All right, nobody died," right? I've heard that radio. Nobody died. I really felt like I was in mourning for a week or two. It's just like, sure. I can't believe it ended. I can't believe that happened. The Burgers, we're not going to be with them again, and all these other things. There's so much you invest together as a group of as parents that when it comes to an end, you just look at each other and go, "Wow, I can't believe it's over."
And it was so abrupt. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't what we were expecting. And, Jeff and I had we did a live podcast right after the game. And that was a tough one for us. And we don't know the women. Right. And so I can't imagine what it's like, not just knowing, but having one of your children have to go through that and knowing, anytime your child is hurting, you can't do anything for them. That's just heart-wrenching as a parent. So I can only imagine
about that floor, looking at Mackenzie on that post conference and watching her. I mean, you're just like, oh God. And
yeah.
I will add this to a very bad twist to the Greece trip. The Miami women's team was at the same place we were at in Greece for the final 4 days, the same hotel resort. So we had to walk around and look at them for 3 days. So it's just sad. That was the worst part of the Greece trip.
That's ironic for you. Well, maybe let's switch and let's end on maybe a happy note if you have one. Do you have any funny, either Coach Moran or anyone from the coaching staff, any funny stories that you can share with us from the past 4 years, maybe from this trip, whatever, that really sticks out to you and says, this is this kind of example of the kind of personality that the coaches bring to the teams?
Not so much a funny story, but something that stood out with me is last year when Kenzie was one of the Wooden Award finalists. And so we went out to the LA Athletic Club. And to be honest with you, like most of the conversations for us as parents happen with the assistants. And I purposely, like, Coach Moran is Coach Moran. She's the head coach. And I feel like, I'll talk to assistants. I don't need to be talking to her. But we just had we had a moment out there where we just talked and we're like, "Can you believe this?" And she looked at me like, "Can you believe your girl is standing here doing this?" And I like that girl who couldn't get to say 2 words her first month on campus is now out here, as a Wooden Award final. And it was just a really sweet moment to have with Coach Moran in terms of seeing how much that meant to her. You don't really know, but that meant to her personally. It wasn't just about wins and losses. And you saw how she reacted to Grace Berger being drafted, right? A similar type experience that really stayed with me. Like, because at times you don't know because we don't talk. The head coach is the head coach, and you don't want to be bothering them. But that was a real nice moment, and I really appreciated her. Looking at me and going, "Can you believe this?" I'm like, "No, I really can't."
Well, awesome. Jeff, any other last minute questions? If not, we can start.
No, I just thoroughly have enjoyed this episode with Lenny.
Oh, yeah. So a couple of comments.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out to us. It's a pleasure to have you on. So a couple comments from other listeners coming in right now. So one is from our from our good friend Joel. Evidently, you guys sit next to each other at the game. So he just wanted to tell us hi and to keep yelling travel anytime we play Miami again at the Refs. And then also, I think this is just a nice note from Brian Whitaker. And I think everyone can say just thank you for sharing your daughter with Hoosier Nation. She's been a joy to watch the last 4 years, and everyone's just ecstatic to have her back. So thank you for allowing her to travel away from Maine and really, choose her own path. And we've been just, it's been amazing watching her and her growth the last 4 years. So thank you for being her dad. So, any last words, Lenny, that you want to share with our listeners before I kind of talk about what's next for our show?
No, just keep coming to the games. They love it. The players love it. The more people there, I think, no question, that place is becoming a real tough place to visit. And so everybody just keep coming and keep cheering.
Yeah. Absolutely. I second that. So cool. All right. Well, up next for us, our program notes are, we don't have an exact date for the doing the work. Next episode, there is a lot of travel and things going on in September that we might be a little bit absent again here, but just watch our Twitter accounts. You can search for doing the work out on Twitter if you don't follow us already, or if you're in the private community, we'll post it there once we have our next date. On the men's side, the assembly call will be doing their normal show tomorrow at their normal time. So make sure you check them out. And the next time we do have a show, if you would like to also join the live chat and be able to interact with whomever we con to get on with us in the evenings here during the summer, going into the fall, please join us at youtube.com/assembly call, where you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and then follow along live. You can also find us at assemblycall.com/community, where you can find out about joining that private community where we talk Indiana women's basketball, men's basketball, and dabble a little bit in some of the other sports that Indiana has as well. A special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design. He designed our logo that you can see here on the podcast if you're watching on YouTube, or if you see us on Twitter, or I guess X now. I don't know that I'm going to call it that. I can't get that out of my head. So, but a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our new music that you heard earlier in the broadcast. And most of all, thank you all for listening. Thank you especially, Lenny, for coming on. It's been a very enjoyable conversation with you. Wish you the best as you go into your final year of watching your daughter play basketball. It's going to be very emotional, I'm quite sure. So good luck handling all of that. And again, appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
Cool. And again, we'll talk to you in probably a couple weeks or so. But until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers.
All right. Thanks, awesome. Lenny. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. I shouldn't say I, but we were the ones talking, but just love to have you back sometime.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we didn't even talk about, I forgot, was, are we still live? I see that thing.
Yeah, we're still live.
Yep.
Okay. So if you want to bring it up.
This
is kind of our post game.
IU going to Maine for our game this year, November 30th.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. I've started, and again, I'm one of those guys who organizes stuff. So I put out a thing about if you want to be in the Indiana group section, the Mackenzie Holmes fan section. Mm-hmm. And right now I've got about close to 900 tickets.
Wow. That's great. Oh, that's
it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful evening. So many people up here are so excited to have Indiana come, and then to have Mackenzie play, right in her backyard, the court where she's won a gold ball and won state championships. And so that's that is going to be, I think, one of the highlights of the whole season, especially for her. She was so excited when she called me, like, she found out at like 7:30. She called me like 1 minute afterwards. Dad, you're not going to believe it. We're coming to Maine. I go, what? Where are you playing? We're playing in Portland. We're playing across. So
but Coach Morin's done a pretty good job of that. It seems like of trying to get games where some of her seniors to get them back towards home.
Yeah. We she did the Quinnipiac game 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought, well, that was it.
That was going to be it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one came right out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I know the main coach that I got in contact with her and thanked Coach Vashon, great coach up there. And she does wonderful things with the main program. And she was just like, hey, this is just great for women's basketball. So when you were saying that stood in my mind. She's like, this is just great for women's basketball in New England. We're going to sell out. 6,000 people are going to be there. And it's great for our program. We get people eyes on our program. We get to kind of salute a player from the state who's done stuff no one else has ever done. So it was really cool about it too. So that's pretty fun.
How far would you? Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, are you planning to go down to Florida as well to the games over Thanksgiving? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got tickets for that already.
I might be going to that. We haven't quite decided. So if I do, I'll reach out to you and we can.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Lenny, since you're kind of almost I'll call you a member here of the assembly called Doing the Work team. There's usually, I don't know, I think sometimes for the women's games, they do like a meetup at halftime and take like a group picture and stuff. So you might, we'll try and keep you in the loop from that.
Oh, okay, good.
But anyway, and your friend Jeff is saying, can you believe your daughter is now bigger than Cindy Blodgett? So, so how far are you from the main campus?
From the UMaine campus?
Yeah.
That's like 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, they're up in more of the central northern part of the state.
I just wasn't sure what the travel time was.
Yeah, it would have been about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So I think that's why it was so important. And I've heard, I'm not sure, but I heard it was kind of Coach Moore was pretty insistent that it would be down in it's called Portland area, Portland, Maine. It's a great, down in this area because that's where most of the people are, and that's where she grew up playing.
I spent a summer working in Maine at a camp up in Naples, Camp Takaho. Which the guy who owns it, had just bought it. Jeff Konigsberg was his name. And then later on, I'm reading in People magazine, and he ends up marrying Joan London.
Oh, really?
From Good Morning America fame. It's like, I know that guy. I first they were talking, it was about, Joan London gets married. And I was kind of flipping there like, I know that guy. I worked for him for a summer. So I know what you're talking about, but I wasn't sure. Again, I kind of lost track of how far it was from that Portland area on up into the campus. So
that's great.
Definitely.
So
awesome.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy all of your upgrades on all of your travel this year.
Yeah.
Get them in.
I was gonna say, if she goes overseas, I'll really be styling it.
Yeah.
I'll be in first class with all these points.
Hey, real quick question. I didn't ask him, and I'll throw it in here. I know we said we're going to let you go, but like when you went on your visit, do you remember who the like the players were that were hosting her?
Brenna Wise was the biggest, was there. Allie was there. So those were the two. I mean, Mackenzie's actually going to Brenna's wedding up in Pittsburgh. So they were really close.
Because her recruiting trip would have been when Buss and Cahill were seniors, right?
Correct. Yeah. They weren't around much. We did our first Hoosier Styria that year. So it was really Brenna and Allie.
Okay.
Most of the conversations with them on that trip, and Coach Banks was great as well. She was awesome. During that time with all the recruiting, all the coaches of Fox, all of them have been fantastic over the years, and Coach Coach Wiersma has kind of been her position coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's really he's been the one who she's worked with the most over time.
Okay.
Cool.
She's actually done. I joke with them that she's kind of their closer. I don't know if you noticed when all these recruits, there's usually they put something about, well, I was talking to Mackenzie. Mackenzie eventually wants to coach. That's what she wants to do.
Does she really? Okay. Interesting.
That's great.
Yeah, that's exactly
great.
That's her. I mean, without question, she wants to coach, and she said, she's loved how much she's learned, recruiting kids while she's been there and doing that part of it. But that's where she wants to head, and that's what she wants to do.
What's she majoring?
Human and health studies, management, something.
Gotcha.
It's a funny joke because she gives me crap all the time that I can't actually say what her major is. Well, you don't ever plan on using it, so why do I got to learn it?
Why bother learning what it is? Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
So.
All right, guys. Thank you again, Lenny. We'll try to talk to you maybe midway through the season or something. Get your take on how things are feeling and going.
Yeah.
So
sure, great, awesome.
See you guys. Love it.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yep.